We're doing complexion, but we're doing it for photography. So that's what you'll need to execute the next steps. What you're looking at is your 6-color contour palette, your blender babe, which you got wet, your foundation, pressed powder, concealer. I would recommend having on deck either Sugar Cakes or Sugar Crush, or one of the brand new, like the Sugar Pop and Sugar Punch, because we're gonna really pop those cheeks today too. We'll also have the face brush set on deck. If you're somebody who does a lot of Facebook Lives, if you ever have to attend a live event like a wedding or a huge function and there's gonna be flash photography, this is gonna be suitable. Think of it in terms of when there's gonna be HD lighting or photographic lighting. This is what this is for. Let's start with, you've got your primer on. We're going to move next into foundation. Why do we do that next? It filters and sets you up for, what's the next one? Concealer. What does the concealer do? It's heavier, targeting spots that your filter didn't cover. What's gonna be our next move? Setting it in place. And then we'll contour and then wrap it out with blush and highlight. So you've got the play-by-play. We will start with a brush. Go ahead and dispense however many pumps of foundation you prefer. If you like a full coverage look, you can go for it. Load up your brush as if it was yesterday. We're gonna frame out the brows, frame out the under eye. Treat the end of this brush like it's a little fine-tipped pencil. We want the end of this guy to be like sharp. Can you see how sharp it is? Starting out with the brows, you guys can do this right along with me. We're gonna carve out the upper brow, fan into the forehead, carve out the upper brow on the other side. Next up, we're gonna go in between the brows and just carve down. Now let's carve out underneath the eyes. I want you to have the handle of your brush pointing down towards the floor, so my brush handle is way down here, and I'm treating this thing like a little pencil. And I'm carving out the under eye. So you did your cleanup earlier, and your goal here is not to erase your halo. And you can fan down into the cheek to wherever it would be safe for your blender babe to touch. Now we're gonna go into using the blender babe. So I'm taking anything that was left on my brush, I wipe it on my blender babe, waste nothing. And now I have the cap to my blender babe, or I'm sorry, the cap to my foundation. I'm gonna take my blender babe. This guy has like a little pointy end and it has a rounded end. So I'm gonna be working with the pointy end because I feel like it gives me a little bit more, I guess, precision when I'm working. So I have my pointy end and I'm loading foundation onto it like this. The end looks like it's nice and loaded up with products. So now we're gonna go back into the T. So we've got T-zone. Make sure and get some good coverage on the forehead. If you're gonna be under hot lights in really humid weather, or you just really like full coverage and not the dewy look, but more of like a matte look, make sure and get good coverage on the forehead. You're gonna follow down the nose for the full T. Make sure and get the sides of the nose. And I'm using like a pat press motion. Reason that I'm using pat press motion is for those of you who your goal was to smooth out texture in your skin like pores or fine lines, if you apply and you start sliding like this, you're gonna pull all the primer out of your pores and wipe it out. You won't get that whole pore filling effect from your primer if you're pushing it out of the pores. That sliding motion is not gonna serve you. So instead, I want you using a pat press motion, especially in zones where you have texture. So I'm getting the pore zone really well. Make sure you get underneath your nose. So I'm pushing up against the nostril as well. That's crucial for camera work. It's an often overlooked space. We'll go into the chin, and I'm reloading as I go. And if you have anything left on the top, go ahead and grab that and we'll fill in the cheeks a little bit. And then start blending. Around the nose and like the pore zone, I'm gonna roll, like dot and roll, make sure that everything is blended in beautifully. Outer corner of the eye too, just dot a little bit. In between the brows, smooth it out. In the cheeks, dot and roll. When you have it all blended out, you've blended toward the hairline, toward the ear, and you've got full coverage on your face. Next, extra pump of foundation on your cap. Make sure your Blender Babe is nice and damp before you do this because you want some flex and you want some blendability to it. I'm loading the top of the Blender Babe again, so we're all loaded up. Here's the crucial part. I want you doing an upward motion in the center of the neckline. I want you to bring it across the collarbones as well. Anything else left on the cap, go ahead and grab it. And we're gonna start blending. Now, do I do this every day? Absolutely not. But when it counts, like if it's on camera and it's going to be noticeable or that picture's not going away for a long time, or date night and you wanna look super sexy and pop those collarbones forward, upward motion in the neckline for sure. Crosswise and upward combo for the shoulders, the collarbones, upward, upward, upward in the neck, going against gravity, going anti-aging, and side to side type of a motion across the collarbones into the shoulder. Look in the mirror, check your symmetry, check and make sure it's all balanced. Make sure that you're blended in the neckline. Make sure that you've got equal coverage both sides of the face. Make sure you've got a matching neckline with your head. Double check your work. Okay, next, conceal. I'm going in first with darkest shade of concealer. I'm gonna load my brush up with that. Let's start with under eye. We're gonna go underneath the eye and really brighten this inner corner. If by chance you overlapped or you got a little eyeshadow up in here, I want you to erase it. Here's your moment. So really nice and clean and fresh in this inner corner of the eye. We're gonna re-highlight that if you need to. So really blow out light in that inner corner. The reason that we're using this peachy tonality, I'm looking for the color that has the most peach, the most gold undertone to it. The reason we're pulling that is it cancels dark circles underneath your eyes. So if you have still kind of a blue tone or a gray tone underneath your eye, this is gonna cancel that out. So really brighten the inner corner of the eye. And then check and see, some people have still purple or blue all the way down through here. You cover what's suitable for your eye. And just fan it out into the surrounding foundation. Fan and tap. Little pro tip for you. If you have like a hard line where you're seeing, okay, so my foundation is clearly all over my face, and then you can see where your concealer stops and doesn't really melt in with your foundation, take the end of your Blender Babe and just kind of dot and blend. That also kind of does you a favor if you're someone that overloads your brush or uses too much concealer. This is gonna help to lift off if you have too much excess. If you have any blemishes on your face, this is my personal preference on how to use the concealer trio. You have your color that's color canceling for the under eye. Typically that has like the most peach or gold undertone to it. You'll have one shade that's clearly brighter than the rest, like a very light shade. The lightest shade is a highlighting concealer. They're sometimes called a brightener. The shade that's like a medium color, it can be used for either one. So if you run out of this guy, this does have enough peach to it that it can help to cancel out under eye dark circles in a pinch. But typically the shade is used for blemish cover-up or scarring. So take a look at your complexion as if you're gonna get shot for the cover of like Fortune magazine or Vogue. And if you're being really picky, is there anything that you still wanna cover up that the foundation didn't get to? If so, your medium shade of concealer is what you're gonna go after to get those spots. This will be helpful for someone who has acne or something that's raised. Protocol is you're gonna take your brush and pat, press over the spot. And here's why. When you take your brush and just swipe like this, you're actually wiping the concealer and the foundation off of the blemish. So it can be frustrating to try and get blemish cover up because every time that you try, you're wiping it off. Pat press motion. And then when we powder the skin, as long as you kind of go in a circle around it and pat press, make it make friends with the surrounding foundation, you won't be able to see where it's at when you powder. I want to show you what to do with this brightening concealer. We have a protocol called the Celebrity Secrets Double Conceal, and I'll be using an element of that today. But I want to brighten the T-zone as well. So I want you to leave this guy open. We are going to move into powder next, but I'm going to show you how to brighten for pictures. So leave it open and available. We'll move into popping on pressed powder next. Go ahead and load your pressed powder onto the big end of the Dual Foundation brush, and we'll set the T-zone. It's also helpful if you drop your chin and then look at your mirror from that position. It's gonna open up all this under eye space and minimize how much creasing happens. If you have any creases in your concealer from the time that you put it on until you powder, make sure and smooth that out before you pop on any of your dual press powder. So we're basically doing like almost like a figure 8 around the eyes. Next, we're gonna switch brushes. So today's look is a lot more matte and full coverage. So you are allowed to use more of your dual press powder to get a matte finish, long wear, and ultimate coverage. It's called dual press powder because it not only mattifies, but it adds coverage. That's it. So popping a little bit more of this will give you even more of that porcelain doll, pristine, perfect on-camera look. I'm switching into a buffer brush for this move. I'm gonna go ahead and load my brush up. And I'm pretty generous with it. So I'm giving it like a lot of good swirls. The full like top of the brush is covered. Now the difference today is we're not being sparing with the powder. So I'm gonna have you, this is like on set, under hot lights, in a humid climate, or when you really need it to count, like you need it to stay on, you're gonna pat press your powder into place. You might get some powder that falls a little bit, no big deal. It might sparkle your bathroom counter a smidge, but a little bit more on your brush is better for this move. And I'm doing pat press or pack press and driving the powder through the wetness of both the primer and the foundation. Make sure you get underneath the nose, really pat press there. That's a place where a lot of the time when people get nervous or frustrated or flustered, that's the first place that it shows. For example, working on like politicians or people that have to give a speech, I've been the key player behind the scenes for people that need to do like a comeback speech or to win an audience, and there's a ton on the line for them, and mostly male. It's like a male normal field. However, we always did makeup on them, we always powdered them, and we also made sure that they had coverage on their ears as well, with both foundation and with powder, because just like we talked about this morning, you can package yourself to walk in and win. But if your face is telling a different story than your outfit and your body language, you can't hide that. So with politicians or people who are giving a speech and they need to talk about things that they're not comfortable with, if there's been a scandal, if they have to be public when they would rather be hiding at their house, we make sure to add coverage on the sides of the nose. We make sure that we pack press in the forehead so that if they sweat or perspire on camera because they're nervous, it doesn't show. We make sure and hit the ears as well, especially on guys. So ears and sides of the nose. Because if they can maintain their composure, if they can maintain their posture, if they walk in dressed the part, and we can cover it for them, if they sweat on camera, if someone asks them a question that they weren't ready for, if something potentially damaging or embarrassing happens for them, they don't turn red. It's like the ultimate poker face. If you're going into a situation where you're going to see family members that you're like, they always get me. Like, they always get me riled up. I don't want to show it. Business situations where you feel like, I don't even know if I have all the answers, and I'm going to get asked something that is going to be really embarrassing. Use this strategy. You want as much coverage around the red nose or the red zone of the nose as possible. Hit your ears, really mattify the forehead so that if you're sweating under pressure, nobody can tell. We've done the pack press around the entire face, and I want you to carry that into the neckline. You could use a couple different products for this. Brush-wise, you could be either using what I've got, which is a buffer brush, or we also have a larger brush that really fans out. It's called the jumbo powder brush. That would also be appropriate. What I like about the jumbo powder brush is that it just puts on a really, really thin layer, and when it hits your skin, it really, really fans out. So it's soft and there's not any drag to it, especially in that neck area that we don't want to cause any like pulling, tugging, or aging on. Let's move into that brightest color of concealer. Have your contour palette open. Most of you, if you take the vanilla or the porcelain shade from your contour palette, set it next to your pressed powder and tell me which one's lighter in color. The matte highlighter is lighter than your face shade. If I put the lightest shade of concealer next to her skin, it's definitely lighter. If you took this really, really light shade of concealer and popped it on to brighten, but then you put your dark powder on top, which one's gonna win? The darker powder. So wherever we put this light color of concealer, what needs to go on top? A lighter color of powder, such as your highlighter. We're gonna break a couple rules. We've already set her makeup, and typically it goes liquid, then powder, and then you're done. Today we're gonna add more creamy products and set again. It's totally okay for you to pop this on top of something that's powdered. Load up your brush with the lightest shade of concealer, and we're gonna brighten. First zone that I like to do is I'll have you drop your chin in just a moment, and you're gonna look into your mirror, and you might notice that you still have a little bit of depth, maybe some dark circles that need to be highlighted. And if not, just follow the pattern of what I'm doing. So I'm hitting the inner corner of the eye. I'm fanning across the under eye zone. And I'm making kind of like a triangle shape and filling it in. The reason behind this is that we want to create as much brightness in this zone as possible, and we're giving it a shape without crossing into the nose. Inner corner, all the way across the lower lash line and then bring it down into kind of a V or a triangle shape. Then I'm fanning it into the surrounding skin so that you can't tell where the concealer stops. A little brighter, can you see it? Next move, go ahead and load up your brush one more time. I'm going to do something that I lovingly call the palm tree. We're going to start at the tip of the nose and make a really thin line going up the nose, in between the eyes. We're giving it even more of a base to stand out on top of. So we're currently making the trunk of the palm tree. Can you see it? That's nice. Doesn't that give her nose already more of like that dimension? And there's no contouring even on there yet, but just adding more light to the center makes the center pop forward. Makes it look more slender and more streamlined. Keep it nice and thin, nice and skinny. Reload your brush, still in the lightest shade of concealer, and I want you to trace over the brows. And you guys know the shape of a palm tree, right? What do the branches do at the top? They fan out. We've got even more brightness over the eyes. And I'm gonna fan out like it's like rays of the sun or the top of a palm tree and fan out into the surrounding skin. Last little zone that we're gonna pop this in, same shade of concealer. We're gonna hit the upper lip line and give ourselves even more base for our highlight. If you have a tiny chin, you can pop some highlight in the center of your chin as well. Now before I blend this, I want to show you something super freaky. We talked about people making subconscious decisions about you all day long. It's social science. It's not that they're bad. It's not that you're unworthy. It's just the human mind is what people do. They make decisions about whether they want to talk to you. They make decisions on whether you're dangerous or safe. They make decisions on, they're like playing a tape in their head about what the inside of your house looks like. For those of you who have never been to my house before, what do you imagine the inside of my house looks like? I heard clean, organized, put together, perfect and spotless, super stylish, fresh, super bright white, beautiful chandeliers. And I'm not going to tell you who's right and who's wrong, because some of you are completely off and some of you are absolutely on target. But the point that I'm making is people guess about you based on how you're packaged. And they make a decision about whether they think they want to hang out with you, whether you're worthy of them handing, the bank information over, whether they want to trust you with their credit card, or whether they even want to walk on the same side of the street as you. There's people that I would not shake their hand if you paid me $100, because I'm like, where has that hand been? Because I'm making up a story in my mind. They could be meticulous. They could be just as germ freak as I am. But I'm making up a story in my mind based on how they're packaged and their body language. Along that road, if we can take it even further into psychology of like color, when you use this strategy on your face for camera, for TV, for film, for photography, for meeting people, they will fall in love with you. Would you like to know why? Okay, here we go. We have the palm tree. It's wrapping around the eye. We did that really cool triangle. It connects down here, or for some people down here. It's filled in here. What am I tracing right now? A heart. This type of a strategy is sending a subconscious signal to your audience of a heart, and they don't know why they want to stare at you, but they do. They're like, I like her. You know nothing about her, but you like her. Now that you see this, when you check out stuff that's in online media, you're going to see that heart. And it especially works on heart-shaped faces already, but even if you have a very long or square face, like I have a longer face, I can still get it. I just skip the chin highlight. It's enough for me to do the heart in the center of my face and connect with the upper lip. So I'm doing more contouring down here so that my heart pops forward more. And then when you add the contrast of putting contour here and here, it intensifies the heart. Now if it appeals to you, we can go ahead and blend this because it's a little awkward, okay? So we'll go in and you can blend either with your brush if that's your mode of blending, or you can pop in with your blender, babe. So blending, I'm just dotting and rolling into the surrounding skin. What I don't want to see happen is I don't want you pulling this all the way up into the hairline because you're going to lose your heart shape. And wherever you have this lighter shade of concealer, I want you setting it with what? Vanilla highlighter. And which brush would you prefer for accuracy? Dual Foundation Blender. And then when it's blended out, you really don't see it as much, but it's there. It's subliminal and it is there. Proceed to load your Dual Foundation Blender brush, grab your vanilla, go ahead and set this in place, and then we will contour. If you're not the best at blending contour, what two colors are we going to be mixing today? Vanilla and grayish. Great. If you have a deeper skin tone or you're ultimately confident with contouring, what are we using color-wise? Grayish or butterscotch. Okay, for those of you who are super intense with your contouring, what's another option you can do after you've popped in grayish? You can actually use chocolate. Trippy, but true. Even our N25 babes can be using chocolate to intensify. But here's the skinny. There's a responsibility that comes with using chocolate as your contour. I want you to contour first with grayish and then go back in with the lightest pressure on the planet and your chocolate. So while I'm popping contour, I'm going to be talking to Crystal about her brand. Crystal, part of the reason that she's here this weekend is it's brand launching. She's had a brand for a hot minute called Choose You, and she's formerly a doula. So she's the chick that helps crunchy moms to have the baby without the medical intervention. I'm highly fascinated with more information. So tell me more about how you launched your brand. Why did you become a doula in the first place?
So I have 4 children, and with my first, I labored and I had issues with my progression, and it ended after 27 hours of labor in a C-section. And I can remember being wheeled back into my room and seeing my baby, and I feel like I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost myself from being wheeled down from that room to having him. And I lost out on seeing him be born and feeling like I was a real woman, and that's what I felt like I would have to do, is have a natural birth to be a real woman.
How do you feel about that now? When you go back and you revisit that internal tape that was playing of if you don't have a natural birth, you're not a real woman. How do you feel about that now? Because that's quite the tape.
Yeah, I feel bad for her.
Oh.
There was one moment that family and friends came to see me hours after he was born, and somebody said, "What's wrong with women this day and age having C-sections?" And I just wept that night because I thought, nothing is wrong, and I had a baby and I became a mom, and I'm here and he's here, and that's all that matters. But
yes.
I carried it for years. So he's 11 now.
Okay.
And it was probably about 3 years ago that I really released it. So I had 4 C-sections, and my 4th was a healing process for me. I went in there with a very dominant birth plan, even though I knew it was a scheduled C-section. I told him all the things I was going to experience, and there was no way around it. And he's like, all right.
what did you ask for? Can I?
Yeah, sure.
I'll make sure we hit this, but what did you ask for in your adamant birth plan? What is that?
Right. So with my first 3, they were taken out, brought to another room upstairs. I didn't see them for about an hour and a half. I was by myself in recovery. They were weighed, measured.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Your baby got pulled out of your body and you didn't see it for an hour and a half.
They were like, here's your baby, and then they were gone. It was very hard. And so with my 4th, I knew he was our last, and I had learned so much with my doula training and just learning new ways of having a cesarean birth and not considering it a surgery. And so I went to my OB and I said, I want skin to skin. He will not leave me. I want to see him weighed. I want to see him cleaned and washed.
Yeah.
I want every single thing to be done in front of my eyes because I missed that.
Wow. So like being empowered, even though what you had programmed yourself or someone else had programmed you to believe about birthing,
Yes.
and it was disempowering for you, and knowing like, I'm not getting a VBAC, I'm not going to go from C-section to natural birth, that wasn't really your option.
No.
But you reclaimed that for yourself.
Yes.
I didn't even know this was a thing. Did you guys know this was a thing?
So after I came in with all of these requests, I have seen every birth of a cesarean birth, they followed that plan. There was skin to skin. The mother got to see everything. I don't know if I started it because I don't know anybody before me that did it, but they've seen a huge change in women.
Wow. So like in your region, you were part of the empowerment process for other moms. She wasn't just fighting for her, but she was opening up a door to say, you're allowed to do this and you're allowed to ask for this. Okay.
It's so important to know that it's your journey and not the nurse and not the doctor. And yes, the complications can arise.
Sure.
And you can need a cesarean birth.
Sure.
And that's fine. Just be happy that the end result is everything worked out. And not to carry the burden of that, because you should be enjoying your baby and not mourning the loss of a natural birth, because I became a mom.
Amazing? Is she amazing? So in a perfect world, being a doula, you can also advise people on the crunchy route.
Right.
Give me one tip.
Well, after I became a doula, I also became a dancing for birth instructor. But that's a knowledge and fitness program. So I run like 8 classes once a week, and they're an hour and a half. So we do a lot of dancing, a lot of education, and I don't just educate on natural birth, I also educate on cesarean birth because it's a reality.
Smart. It is reality.
And women need to be emotionally prepared for that. My number one thing that I always encourage, whether you are a seasoned mom and you're coming to a class, or you are brand new, or even you're not pregnant yet and you want to start a family, is you need to go into it with confidence that this is your journey in life, nobody else's, and that you also need to trust the process. Your body was created to have babies and give birth, and sometimes it's not easy for specific women, but that's your journey, and to be proud of yourself, be proud of your body, whether you are in labor 2 hours and give birth or 40 hours. It's such a beautiful process to see a woman become a mother, and that you don't need to lose yourself along the way, whether it's guilt or to give up who you are because now there's another person in your life. And that happened to me along the way, and this is how I started Choose You, because I did lose who I was along the way.
Now, you took action, and Choose You has been born. I was contouring and you were getting quizzed in the last section. So you got to experience contouring. You have a rough idea of where it goes. Remind me. Forehead then. Cheekbones. What's the guideline? Where do you start? Right here where your hair kind of hooks to your ear, like right in here, that's your starting point. And what are you shooting for? If you kept on going, going, going and never stopped, what would it connect to? The outer corner of your mouth. So make sure that it's low enough. That's probably my biggest tweak that I get from people is that they contour and it's like they're aiming for their nose. And so their contour is way the freak up here. And I'm like, no, aim for the mouth. But you're not carrying it all the way down to the mouth. You're going to stop about halfway. Why? And it doesn't look like a sideburn. It's got to come down to a point. Comes to a point. Not like a big, like, chop. Where else does your contour go? Your nose. Give me some guidelines. Shout them out. Thin. What else? You're starting about inside the eye. Like, that's your height. What are my lines supposed to be like? Are they supposed to be like an Oreo cookie, like the 2 cookie sandwiches? They are the same space apart from top to bottom. And pop in the ice cream cone V at the end of your nose. Where else do we contour? Underneath the jawline. And talk to me about blending. And while you're talking about it and we're discussing, what do you do if your contour is too dark and it's going to take over your whole entire real estate when you get on camera later? Load up a brush with your pressed powder and tone it down. If your contour ends up looking like it's gray-ish or like dirty, does anyone know an advanced hack to warm it up? Mix a little bit of butterscotch, or if you've got a very light complexion, you can mix butterscotch and vanilla so that you add some warmth and you are popping in warmth and not looking muddy on camera. So I want you to do last looks on yourself before we move any further. I want your mirror in front of you. I want you turning side to side. I want you checking, okay, is my jawline blended? Do I need to use a little bit more pressure? Do I need some powder on my brush to kind of tone it down, right? Double check that zone. Make sure your forehead is nice and blended. Double check the cheek contour. See if the nose is too dark. That's my biggest faux pas that I've ever seen on after photos, is the nose is too dark and it takes over the whole face. Like, you can't even see the beauty of the eyes because people go straight to the nose. Thank you so much. Round of applause.